For number 1, we're given the midpoint and one of the endpoints, and we're asked to find the other endpoint. Here's the formula for how to find a midpoint. It's on page 187 of the textbook, and it's basically just an average. So you have two x values, you add them together and divide by 2. You're averaging the x values. You have two y values, you add them together and divide by 2. You're averaging the y values. So in our situation, I'll call this endpoint x1, y1, and I don't know the other endpoint, so it's just going to stay as variables x2 and y2. So to get our x coordinate of the midpoint here, I average the two x values. So the x value I know and the x value I don't know. Divide those by 2 and they will equal the x value of the midpoint. So now you can solve this equation down, multiply both sides by 2. At this step, add 4 to both sides, and you get the x value of the other endpoint. And do the same thing with your y values. The y value you know from the one endpoint, the y value you don't know from the other endpoint, average them, and they equal the midpoint y value. And multiply both sides by 2. Subtract 5 from both sides, and here is the y coordinate of the other endpoint. So here's your x and y coordinate and your answer. You can also solve a problem like this graphically from your one endpoint, looking at the x direction. To get to the midpoint, you move over 3. So to get to the other endpoint, you're going to have to move over 3 more. And then from this spot, we have to move up 4 to get to the midpoint. And so to get to the other endpoint, we have to move up 4 more. And that'll give you to your other endpoint of 2, 13. For number 2, we're doing operations on functions. Here we're doing a division. And you can look at page 278 in the text. But to do this division, first you want to find f of negative 3, and you also want to find g of negative 3, and then you want to divide those results. So to find f of negative 3, plug the negative 3 in everywhere you see an x, so it's just in this one spot. So we're going to have 2 times negative 3 minus 2. And to reduce that further, that changes to negative 6 minus 2, which turns into negative 8. And the red and the black don't mean anything. I've just kind of color coordinated them so you can see the different steps a little easier broken down. And for g of negative 3, again, plug in a negative 3 everywhere you see an x, so here and here. So once you plug them in, then on the next step, negative 3 squared is 9, and 14 times negative 3 is negative 42. And then 2 times 9 changes to 18. And then if you perform these subtractions and additions, you should end up with negative 19. So now we know f of negative 3 and g of negative 3, we can divide them. So plug in our two results here. And this fraction doesn't reduce, but the negative signs do cancel out, so we get a positive 8/19 as our answer. For number 3, we're going to write a line in slope-intercept form. And you can read more about slope-intercept form on page 235 in the text. The number right here in front of x is the slope, and then the number at the end is the y-intercept. And we want our line to be perpendicular to this line, and we want it to pass through this point. So first we're going to start by writing this line in slope-intercept form so we can look at the number in front of x and quickly see what the slope is. So to get it in slope-intercept form, we need to make sure y is all by itself on the left side. So our first step needs to be to add 8x to both sides, and then divide both sides by 9. And the number right here in front of x is the slope of this line, so positive 8/9. Now a parallel line would also have a slope of 8/9, but a perpendicular line needs to have a slope that is the reciprocal and also negative compared to the sine of this slope. So since this slope is positive, the slope of a perpendicular line will be negative. And it's also, the fraction is flipped over the reciprocal. So instead of 8/9, we have 9/8. So negative 9/8 is the slope of a perpendicular line. So look at what we have so far. We're looking for y equals mx plus b, and we have y equals 9/8x plus b. So we know the slope. All we need to figure out now is the y-intercept. There's one thing we need to figure out. Well, every single point on the line, if you plug it into the line, both sides will be equal to each other. So if we plug in the one point that we know it goes through, both sides will be equal to each other. So plug in the -8 for x and the -2 for y, and both sides will be equal to each other. Well, now we can just solve down to see what b needs to be. So when we take -9/8 times -8, the 8's essentially cancel, and so do the negative signs. So you're left with a positive 9. And now subtract 9 from each side, and you get -11. So now we know our value for b, and so we can write our final solution here. Y equals -9/8x, and our b value is -11.